Once upon a time, in a quiet and serene village named Nyamba, the villagers lived in peace and harmony. The village was surrounded by towering trees and fertile lands. The villagers followed one sacred rule, one that had been passed down for generations: all girls had to remain virgins until they were married. This rule was not just a tradition, it was seen as a divine mandate that brought prosperity to the village. Parents proudly boasted of their daughter's purity, and it was considered the greatest honor to have a daughter who embodied the essence of this rule. Every year, the villagers would gather to celebrate the purity of their daughters. "My daughter has maintained the sacred purity," mothers would boast to each other, and it was a topic of great pride. For the people of Nyamba, the purity of their daughters symbolized their connection to the divine, ensuring that the village remained blessed and safe from harm. No one ever questioned the rule, for it was a central pillar of their identity. One year, a great misfortune struck Nyamba. The once bountiful fields withered, and the animals grew sick. The villagers, fearful and confused, had no idea what was causing the sudden decline in their way of life. Desperate for answers, they sought out the village elder, Nyamba, who was known for her wisdom and spiritual insight. After a long silence, Nyamba finally spoke. "The gods are angry," she said solemnly. "They have witnessed the loss of purity among your daughters. Only by restoring the purity of the chosen maidens can the curse be lifted. You must send 2 virgin girls to the sacred altar within 2 days. If the sacrifice is not made, the curse will grow stronger and the village will be lost." The villagers were struck with panic. They had never heard of such a thing before. How could this happen to them? The rule had always been sacred. But the elders' words were clear: only 2 virgins could carry out the divine sacrifice. The search for these maidens began immediately. The following day, all the young girls of Nyamba gathered at the village square to undergo a test that would reveal whether they were still pure. A sacred necklace was placed into a basin of water, and only a true virgin could retrieve it. The test was sacred and had always been the only way to prove a maiden's purity. The girls, trembling with nerves, took turns dipping their hands into the water. One by one, they failed. The first girl could not retrieve the necklace. Then the second, and the third. Soon, the entire line of girls had tried and failed. There was an air of disbelief. The daughters, who had always been revered for their innocence, were now unable to prove their purity. Even the chief's daughters, Yara and Zina, known for their beauty and grace, could not retrieve the necklace. This was a moment of crisis. The villagers murmured anxiously, unsure of what had gone wrong. The belief in their daughter's purity was shaken. As murmurs of confusion spread through the crowd, the blame shifted quickly. The villagers began pointing fingers, accusing one another of bringing shame upon the village. The first accusations were directed toward Amara, a newcomer to Nyamba who had arrived only a few months ago. Amara was a striking woman from the city, and her unconventional ways had caught the attention of many. She dressed boldly, and her behavior was unlike anything the villagers had seen before. "The curse has come because of Amara," the villagers whispered. "She's the one who led our daughters astray." Amara's presence in the village had caused ripples, especially among the young girls. They were fascinated by her and her free-spirited ways. She did not follow the strict customs of Nyamba, and her influence over the girls was becoming more apparent each day. But the villagers had no idea what had really been happening behind closed doors. Unbeknownst to the villagers, Amara had been secretly meeting with several young men from Nyamba. The meetings were innocent at first, as they shared meals and stories, but gradually, they turned into something more. Amara had been trading her time and attention for gifts and favors from the young men. She knew the village's tradition of purity, but she did not believe in it the same way the others did. As the girls of Nyamba observed Amara's interactions, they began to desire the same attention and gifts. It seemed so easy for her to get what she wanted, and soon, they began to follow her lead. The young girls of Nyamba began meeting the men in secret, trading their own time and affections for material gain. It wasn't long before they began to dress in ways that attracted attention, forgetting the values they had once held dear. Kofi, the chief's son, had always been close to his sister Yara and watched with growing concern as the village's traditions began to falter. One day, he followed his sister when she left their home, curious about where she was going. What he discovered shocked him. Yara had met with a young man at the edge of the village. The two exchanged smiles, and then they disappeared into the woods together. Kofi was devastated. He confronted Yara immediately. "What are you doing?" he demanded. Yara, looking guilty, confessed that she had been meeting the young man in secret, and she admitted that it was Amara's influence that had led her astray. Kofi was torn between his love for his sister and his loyalty to the village. He realized that the village's customs were no longer being followed, and the damage had been done. Yara's confession had a domino effect. Other girls in the village began to come forward, admitting to their secret meetings with the men. They too had been influenced by Amara's example. What began as curiosity turned into full-blown rebellion against the sacred rule of purity. The once pure girls of Nyamba no longer cared about maintaining their innocence. They reveled in the attention they received, and the allure of the material world distracted them from their sacred traditions. The elders, unaware of what had truly transpired, blamed the girls for breaking the sacred rules. They had no idea that it was Amar's presence in the village that had sown the seeds of rebellion. As more girls abandoned the sacred traditions, the curse upon Nyamba intensified. The crops continued to wither, and the animals fell ill. The villagers, who had once lived in harmony with nature, found themselves in a state of panic. They turned to Nyamba for guidance, but she too was at a loss. The gods had spoken, the purity of the village had been lost. And now, they were paying the price. Nyamba, desperate to save Nyamba, announced that the village's only hope was to find 2 virgin girls who had remained untouched by the corruption. The pressure mounted as the search for these maidens became urgent. The villagers began scouring every corner of Nyamba, hoping to find 2 girls who could restore the village's balance. The day of reckoning arrived. The villagers gathered once more at the sacred altar, and the test was set before the girls. It was a simple test: retrieve the necklace from the water. But no girl succeeded. One after another, they all failed, proving that the village's sacred tradition had been irrevocably broken. The villagers were devastated. In their panic, they decided that Amara, the outsider, would be the one to carry out the sacrifice. She was seen as the source of their downfall, and they hoped that by offering her, they could appease the gods and lift the curse. Amara stood at the altar, the weight of the villagers' judgment heavy upon her. She had led the girls astray, and now she would bear the consequences. But as she stood there, facing her fate, she realized something. Perhaps it was not just the purity of the girls that had been lost, it was the village's narrow view of purity itself. She had shown the girls a different way of living, one that was free from the constraints of tradition. As Amara walked toward the altar, she reflected on her journey. She knew she would face the wrath of the gods, but in her heart, she also felt a sense of liberation. The villagers, now realizing the consequences of their actions, could only watch as the gods decided what would become of their once peaceful village.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on our latest content. Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear from you. And share this video with someone who needs it. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.